4th down and 6. Old Bridge gotta have it. Shotgun formation. Nugent, a lot of time. Rolls out. He's running out of space. Will roll the other way. They look, corner of the end zone. Touchdown!
Rowan heading for the touchpad with the lead. And the Profs will take the men's 400-yard freestyle relay.
Andrews will be in shotgun. He takes the snap, fakes the handoff. He'll throw it down the left sideline. He's got a wide open receiver. He's got the touchdown.
Motion man is Simmons. Trotman throwing towards Simmons down the field, and he makes the catch in traffic for a Bearcats touchdown.
Back to pass, middle of the field. The catch is made by Britt. She's off to the races at the 40, the 30, the 20, the 10. Britt is in for the score.
Back on in, here's Yoxon. Yoxon to the back end, trying to go to the front, makes the move and shot, and he scores!
And Gracie comes set and delivers. And that's it on the ground to second. Throw to first, in time, and the ball game is over. South Shore survives a late scare, and they are the 2024 New York State Little League Baseball champions.
Good morning, divers and fans. This morning for prelims, we have the women's 3-meter, men's 1-meter. Your diving order for this morning for the women on 3. First will be Ellie from Roberts Wesleyan University, followed by Sydney from Roberts Wesleyan University, followed by Emma from Roberts Wesleyan University, followed by Magdalena from Brooklyn College. In the men's 1-meter, your diving order, first will be Joel from Roberts Wesleyan University, followed by Christian from Brooklyn College, followed by Jaden from Brooklyn College, followed by Brody from Roberts Wesleyan University, followed by Brendan from SUNY Maritime. Our divers have formed a bit of a bond and are taking a group photo. Getting a briefing from the official here, just to prep them. We'll get started. All right, judges are taking their seats. Just waiting on a thumbs up. 20 minutes late here. right. I don't have the thumbs up, but I think we can go. All right, we're doing one jump. One jump allowance for each diver. Last reminder here in this last jump for these divers, if you download the Dive Live app, you can follow these results live. It's free. Just look up the 2026 Metropolitan Championships at Rutgers University, or you can look up the name of the college that you might be following from, and you should be able to find a meet. There's also not a lot of meets happening on a Sunday, so if you look up meets happening today, we're probably one of the first ones listed. Getting started. We'll be beginning with the women, followed right by the men. Round one for the women. Ellie, 101C, forward dive, tuck, difficulty 1.4. Judges' scores, 5.5, 6.5, 5.5. Sydney, 103B, forward, 1.5 somersault, pike, difficulty 1.6. Judges' scores, 6.5, 6.5, 6. Emma, 103B, forward, 1.5 somersault, pike, difficulty 1.6. Judges' scores, 7, 7, 6. Magdalena, 101C, forward dive, tuck, difficulty 1.4. Judges' scores, 5.5, 6.5, 6. Moving on to the men, round one. Joel, 101B, forward dive, pike, difficulty 1.3. Judges' scores, 5.5, 6, 6.5. Christian, 101C, forward dive, tuck, difficulty 1.2. Judges' scores, 5, 5, 5. Jaden, 101C, forward dive, tuck, difficulty 1.2. Judges' scores, 5.5, 5.5, 6.5. Brody, 103B, forward, 1.5 somersault, pike, difficulty 1.7. Judges scores 6.5, 6-6. Brendan, 402C, inward somersault, tuck, difficulty 1.6. Judges scores 2.5, 1.5, 3. Moving on to round 2 for the women. Ellie, 201C, back dive, tuck, difficulty 1.7. Judges scores 5, 5.5, 5.5. Sydney, 301B, reverse dive, pike, difficulty 1.9. Judges scores 6, 6, 6. Emma, 301B, reverse dive, pike, difficulty 1.9. Judges scores 6.5, 6.5, 6.5. Magdalena, 301C, reverse dive, tuck, difficulty 1.8. Judges scores 4.5, 4.5, 4. Moving on to the men. Joel, 201C, back dive, tuck, difficulty 1.5. Judges scores 6, 6.5, 6.5. Maybe just refresh it. We had a computer freeze. We're back in action. Christian, 401C, inward dive, tuck, difficulty 1.4. Judges scores 6.5, 6.5, 6. Jaden, 201C, back dive, tuck, difficulty 1.5. Judges scores 6, 5, 5. Brody, 202A, back somersault straight, difficulty 1.7. Judges scores 4.5, 5, 4. Brendan, 101B, forward dive pike, difficulty 1.3. Judges scores 4, 3.5, 3. Moving on to round 3 for the women. Ellie, 301C, reverse dive tuck, difficulty 1.8. Judges scores 3, 3.5, 2.5. Sydney, 201B, back dive pike, difficulty 1.8. Judges scores 6.5, 6.5, 7. Emma, 201B, back dive pike, difficulty 1.8. Judges scores 7.5, 7, 7.5. Magdalena, 201A, back dive straight, difficulty 1.9. Judges scores 5.5, 6, 5. Moving on to round 3 for the men. Joel, 301C, reverse dive tuck, difficulty 1.6. Judges scores 4.5, 5.5, 5. Christian, 201A, back dive straight, difficulty 1.7. Judges scores 5, 4, 5. Jaden, 301C, reverse dive tuck, difficulty 1.6. Judges scores 6.5, 6, 6. Brody, 302C, reverse somersault tuck, difficulty 1.6. Judges' scores 5.5, 6.5, 5.5. Brendan, 201A, back dive straight, difficulty 1.7. Judges' scores 4, 5, 4. Moving on, round 4 for the women. Ellie, 5122D, forward somersault, 1 twist, free, difficulty 2.0. Failed dive. Failed dive. Sydney, 401B, inward dive pike, difficulty 1.4. Judges' scores 7, 7, 6.5. Emma, 5231D, back 1.5 somersault, half twist free, difficulty 2.0. Judges' scores 5.5, 6, 5.5. Magdalena, 401B, inward dive, pike, difficulty 1.4. Judges' scores 5.5, 6, 5.5. Moving on to round 4 for the men. Joel, 401B, inward dive, pike, difficulty 1.5. Judges' scores 6, 6.5, 5.5. Christian, 301B, reverse dive, pike, difficulty 1.7. Judges' scores 3.5, 4, 3.5. Jaden, 401C, inward dive, tuck, difficulty 1.4. Judges' scores 5.5, 6.5, 6.5. Brody, 401C, inward dive, tuck, difficulty 1.4. Judges scores 5.5, 6, 6. Brendan, 52-11B, back dive, half twist, pike, difficulty 1.7. They're gonna score it. Judges scores 2, 2, 2. Moving on to round 5 for the women. Ellie, 401B, inward dive, pike, difficulty 1.4. Judges scores 5, 5, 5. Sydney, 52-31D, back, 1.5 somersault, half twist, free, difficulty 2.0. Judges scores 6.5, 7, 7. Emma, 401B, inward dive, pike, difficulty 1.4. Judges scores 8, 8, 8.5. Magdalena, 52-21D, back somersault, half twist, free, difficulty 1.8. Judges scores 3.5, 3, 4.5. Moving on to round 5 for the men. Joel, 52-11A, back dive, half twist straight, difficulty 1.8. Judges scores 5, 6, 5. Christian, 52-11A, back dive, half twist straight, difficulty 1.8. Judges scores 3.5, 5, 3.5. Jaden, 52-11A, back dive, half twist straight, difficulty 1.8. Judges scores 4, 3.5, 3. Brody, 52, 11A, back dive, half twist straight, difficulty 1.8. Judges scores 4.5, 4, 4.5. Brendan, 301C, reverse dive, tuck, difficulty 1.6. Judges scores 4.5, 5.5, 3.5. Moving on to round 6 for the women. Ellie, 402C, inward somersault, tuck, difficulty 0.4. Judges scores 5, 5.5, 5. Sydney, 105B, forward, 2.5 somersault, pike, difficulty 2.4. Judges scores 6.5, 6.5, 6.5. Emma, 105B, forward, 2.5 somersault, pike, difficulty 2.4. Judges scores 7.5, 7, 7.5. Magdalena, 103B, forward, 1.5 somersault, pike, difficulty 1.6. Judges scores 5, 5, 5. Moving on to round 6 for the men. Joel, 103C, forward, 1.5 somersault, tuck, difficulty 1.6. Judges scores 4, 5, 4. Christian, 103C, forward, 1.5 somersault, tuck, difficulty 1.6. Judges scores 2.5, 3.5, 3.5. Jaden, 103C, forward, 1.5 somersault, tuck, difficulty 1.6. Judges scores 6, 5.5, 6. Brody, 104C, forward, 2 somersaults, tuck, difficulty 2.2. Judges' scores, 5.5, 5.5, 4.5. Brendan, 103C, forward, 1.5 somersault tuck, difficulty 1.6. Judges' scores, 3.5, 3, 4.5. Moving on to round 7 for the women. New diving order will be Ellie first, then Sydney, then Emma, then moving on to the men. Round 7, Ellie, 403C, inward, 1.5 somersault tuck, difficulty 1.9. Judges' scores, 5.5, 5.5, 5.5. Sydney, 303C, reverse, 1.5 somersault tuck, difficulty 2.0. Judges' scores, 5, 5.5, 4.5. Emma, 303B, reverse, 1.5 somersault pike, difficulty 2.3. Judges' scores, 5.5, 5, 5. Round 7 for the men. Joel, 202C, back somersault tuck, difficulty 1.5. Judges' scores, 5, 4.5, 5. Computer's frozen. Give us 1 second. Christian, 102C, forward, 1 somersault tuck, difficulty 1.4. Judges' scores, 2, 3, 3. Jaden, 202C, back somersault tuck, difficulty 1.5. Judges' scores, 4.5, 4, 4. Brody, 402C, inward somersault tuck, difficulty 1.6. .402C, inward somersault. Judges score 6, 6.5, 6. Brendan, 202C, back somersault tuck, difficulty 1.5. Judges scores 4.5, 4, 4.5. Moving on to round 8 for the women. Ellie, 203C, back 1.5 somersault tuck, difficulty 1.9. Judges scores 4.5, 5, 5.5. Sydney, 203A, back 1.5 somersault straight, difficulty 2.4. Judges scores 5.5, 5.5, 5.5. Emma, 5132D, forward, 1.5 somersault, 1 twist free, difficulty 2.1. Judges score 7.5, 7.5, 7. Moving on to round 8 for the men. Joel, 302C, reverse somersault tuck, difficulty 1.6. 302C, reverse somersault tuck. Judges scores 5, 5, 4.5. Christian, 402C, inward somersault tuck, difficulty 1.6. Judges scores 3, 3.5, 2.5. Jaden, 302C, reverse somersault tuck, difficulty 1.6. Judges scores 5, 5.5, 5.5. Brody, 203C, back 1.5 somersault tuck, difficulty 2.0. If you think Dive Live is great, RAT, they give the judges iPads and they click the number and it auto goes in. Of course, RAT wins. Judges scores 5.5, 5-5. Brendan, 104C, forward, 2 somersaults, tuck, difficulty 2.2. Hard dive. Judges scores 5-4-4. Moving on to the women, round 9. Ellie, 302C, reverse somersault tuck, difficulty 1.7. Judges scores 5.5, 6-5. Sydney, 403B, inward, 1.5 somersault pike, difficulty 2.1. Judges scores 7, 6.5, 6.5. Emma, 205C, back, 2.5 somersault tuck, difficulty 2.8. Judges scores 6, 5.5, 6. Wow. Round 9 for the men. Joel, 402C, inward somersault tuck, difficulty 1.6. Judges scores 5.5, 5.5, 6. Christian, 202A, back somersault straight, difficulty 1.7. Judges scores 4.5, 4.5. Jaden, 402C, inward somersault tuck, difficulty 1.6. Judges scores 4.5, 4.5, 5. Brody, 301C, reverse dive, tuck, difficulty 1.6. Brody, 301C, reverse dive, tuck, difficulty 1.6. Judges scores 5, 6, 5.5. Brendan, 302C, reverse somersault, tuck, difficulty 1.6. Judges scores 4.5, 5.5, 5.5. Moving on to round 10 for the women. Ellie, 103B, forward, 1.5 somersault pike, difficulty 1.6. Judges scores 4.5, 5, 4.5. Sydney, 5132D, forward, 1.5 somersault, 1 twist free, difficulty 2.1. Judges scores 6.5, 6.5, 7. Emma, 403B, inward, 1.5 somersault pike, difficulty 2.1. Judges scores 7.5, 7.5, 7. Moving on to round 10 for the men. Joel, 5111A, forward dive, half twist straight, difficulty 1.8. Judges scores 2, 2, 2. Christian, 302C, reverse somersault tuck, difficulty 1.6. Judges scores 4.5, 5.5, 5. Jaden, 403C, inward, 1.5 somersault tuck, difficulty 2.2. Judges scores 6, 5.5, 5.5. Brody, 403C, inward, 1.5 somersault tuck, difficulty 2.2. Judges scores 5.5, 5, 5. Brendan, 5122D, forward somersault, 1 twist free, difficulty 1.9. Judges scores 5, 5, 5.5. Round 11 for the women. Ellie, 5211A, back dive, half twist straight, difficulty 2.0. Judges scores 3.5, 4-3. Sydney 52-33D back 1.5 somersault, 1.5 twist, free, difficulty 2.4. Judges scores 6.5, 6.5, 6.5. Emma 405C inward 2.5 somersault tuck, difficulty 2.7. Judges scores 5.5, 6, 5. Round 11 for the men. Joel 52-21D back somersault half twist free, difficulty 1.7. Judges scores 5.5, 5.5, 5.5. Christian 5111A forward dive half twist straight, difficulty 1.8. Judges scores 2-2-2. Jaden 52-31D back 1.5 somersault half twist free, difficulty 2.1. Judges scores 4.5, 3, 3.5. Brody 51-22D forward somersault 1 twist free, difficulty 1.9. Judges scores 5, 5, 5. Brendan 401C inward dive tuck, difficulty 1.4. Judges scores 6.5, 6.5, 6. That concludes diving for this morning, afternoon.